Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike.
Good morning, gentlemen.
There it is.
Happy
And-
Tuesday.
You weren't sure on that one.
I was not sure, but thank you, Tommy, for the lead-in.
Someone's keeping track.
Visual cues, nonverbal cues.
There we go. So just want to let everyone know this is a pre-recorded episode. We have people traveling around during these weeks. So this is summertime for us here in the U.S. So we're taking a little bit of a break, and this is a pre-recorded episode.
Which is why it's so difficult for me to remember the day.
It is.
Usually when we're present, we have a pretty good idea when a Tuesday is. 2 weeks into the future.
I ran out of the last 5 seconds, but thank you, Tommy, to double check and verify.
When we have people that leave in the podcast and trying to tee up the other episodes so we can keep consistent, it usually turns into a period of time where we do a lot of podcasts back to back to back, and it's not bad. It's not a bad thing. It's just it's like an intensity run. You know, there's a lot of things going on. And it's like, what day is it? How long have I been here? Because when it's in a normal month, I can kind of gauge like what day it is based on what we're talking about and what's happening. So I kind of like, okay, we've had one podcast on Tuesday. We have another one on Thursday. Okay, I'm getting ready to go to the weekend. But when you have a lot of them stacked up in a week, I'm like, what day is it really? I really don't know. It feels like tomorrow should be Friday. I've been doing so many of these right now. Are we done yet?
I've mistaken more than once on what episode we're going to do for what agenda. And I felt really proud of an agenda sent to you guys. Like, that's not today.
Like, okay. We've had a couple of those. Whoops, pivot. Something new. Well, with that, we don't really have any news or announcements or beats in the streets this time. So we're going to just jump right into our kind of topic here. Actually, maybe I apologize. I forgot. Tommy, you've got something I think here. We're winding down on summer, and it's getting close to time to send our children back to school. So Tommy, you maybe have a little story here personally around some experiences at home around
not the story, but
the work from home.
This age. So again, my kid, the oldest is, I'm going to say 7 with 90% confidence.
90% certainty. Okay.
And then 2 other young ones, and they're all going to be in school. The youngest will be in kindergarten or pre-K. I really can't wait to miss them. So
I can't wait to miss.
No, they say distance
hard
makes
to
the heart grow fonder.
I can't miss you if you're still here. So no, but it's just that time of year, and we've done a lot of good things with them here. Not a lot of summer camps, but my 2 oldest ones, I wrote a contract with them, and it's basically what they have to do every day. So basically, if they want to do Nintendo or TV, well, they have to. Like my oldest, she has to do 30 minutes of her workbook, 30 minutes of Italian, 30 minutes of reading, yada yada yada. It's been good.
60 minutes of learning Power BI.
Yeah. I mean,
that's a good
I
one.
try to add that, and Sarah's like, just
slow down.
There's enough screens.
Yeah. She doesn't even know how to use the keyboard yet. You can't have her doing things on Power BI yet.
But we're getting to that point now where I think we're about a week away, the end of August for here in Chicago. The kids are, I think, even at each other, they're realizing they need to go back to school and they don't know it. And it's really hard. There's that moment where everyone's getting short with each other, but you still love each other, but you're still like really short with each other.
Would you call it like stir crazy? A little stir crazy? They need a different change of scenery at some point?
I think so. Everyone's personality slightly changing and not for the better.
So your kids are younger, Tommy. You're 7 and younger. Mm-hmm. And Seth, your kids are younger too as well, right?
8 and 10.
Are yours going through a similar experience at this point?
They've been pretty good.
Okay, good.
I mean, because we've been keeping them busy a lot. So a lot of like little summer camp, summer school.
Those help.
Stuff outside, like a couple days a week, going to other places. So realistically, they haven't been around the house a ton all
Just
summer.
Good.
Right? Yeah. So it's I think we've had a good balance this year. We had some family come in. We went on a trip, all this kind of stuff to
it makes a lot of sense.
Stir it up a bit, as opposed to it's the same thing every day. At which point I've been there before. Yep, ready to send them. This summer it kind of went fast. It went quick from busy perspective. So I mean, I'm don't get me wrong, I work from home 99% of the time, and over summer having kids in and out of the house and screaming and yelling is slightly distracting when you're trying to deal with the day to day. But I think they've weathered it well. Parents are always happy when the quiet comes, I think, for a little bit part of the day.
I agree. Our kids are a little bit older. My youngest is 10, my oldest is 14. And there comes a pattern where they start getting involved with doing their activities. So they're leaving for a little bit more. Like my son is in cross country, he does some running. So he's leaving in the morning to go do some running and exercise stuff with the team. And so there's some more time where we have a little bit more distance for things. Also, he's been working at a local restaurant nearby here. And
Oh,
so
really?
that's also been taking larger chunks out of his time. So it's been a different dynamic for us this summer as well, because the kids have been leaving for more extended periods of time doing activity things. And I think it's kind of, you grow them up and they kind of leave the nest a little bit and they kind of do their own thing for a while. So this is part of, that growing up process, and feel like, yeah, they're expanding their wings. Although the job thing has kept us kind of close to home. So typically you would go on a lot of trips or take some adventures. And so if there's a job involved, you're not as inclined to leave the house all the time, or we're not inclined to, like, we have to get so-and-so at, to work, we have to pick them up and these things. So we're not able to as easily, let's just go see family for a weekend or go for a little trip or a long weekend here or there.
Yeah.
I have a question for the two of you, just briefly, because this is the first year, at least for 3 of the days, that all the kids are going to be out of the house. And that's going to be incredibly new for us. So one will be in pre-K. This is going to be the first time.
That's a half day, right? Half day out of the house.
Yeah. But still, there's going to be 3 hours
Yeah.
on that they're all going to be out.
Yep.
Is there any in between like what I'm talking about, where I'm like, I'm going crazy, and then Mike, I feel like I'm hearing the extreme of like, no one's here. Look,
no, I don't think it's that. I mean, my kids, to be perfectly clear, they still are home a lot.
Yeah.
They still get on each other's nerves. We still have fighting and picking and, whining at things. Like, so I wouldn't say I'm that far removed from where you are. They have gotten a lot more, as they age, they're able to do more on their own a lot more. But, with that comes just different challenges. So friends and other things can become more of an increased talking point with the kids as they age. So yeah, I don't think you'd say I'm never lonely. It's also really, really nice that we get to work from home most of the time, and I can just show up and go upstairs and have lunch with them and say hello and see them as they're kind of going in and out of the house. So I do really enjoy that too, having the family so close. And this is something we wouldn't experience if we were working from offices and buildings. Like, that's just something that wouldn't happen. So just to be I feel very fortunate that we're in an industry that allows or has the ability for us to be able to work from home, still earn good money, have a schedule, a normal calendar like everyone else would at work. But I don't commute, and I don't know if I'd ever want to go back to an actual office job, because I don't think I really want to have to spend 20 to 30 minutes in a car going to and from work just to get there and then start working. Like, so that's an extra hour of your day just to travel. And that doesn't count for any of your actual time.
Yeah. I mean, it's true for everybody, but in certain roles, like those extra hours in a day are huge. They're huge. Like, and not having to waste them in a car is value. It's a lot of value. I would say I think your wife is going to enjoy it, because it'll give her a window of getting all the stuff done around the house that is just insanely more difficult with kids around, especially young ones. With you, I doubt you'll notice, because it'll be a blink of an eye. Like, you get like with me, it's like, okay, see you later, kids, and then before you know it, it's like they're already walking back through the door, and like, where did my day go? Because I mean, my days are just awesome.
Busy. I'll say this one thing too. I think the bigger change comes when everyone's in school for full days. I think that's a bigger momentum than just like one person for half a day. Because, believe it or not, I mean, even though they're gone for 3 hours or 4 hours for the morning pre-K, you're still doing a lot of planning to get them there and get them home and pack lunches and do things. And so there's still a lot of effort involved, I think, with that. I feel like it's more of a time change when they're there at school all day long, when everyone leaves and then everyone comes back.
Yeah, and a few hours.
I appreciate the wisdom here. 2 of them are going to take the bus, and I'll be walking them, which is crazy. And it's like, as much as I'm making the jokes, I'm like, I'm gonna miss him. Like to
Love
your
the
point
boss.
too, with the consulting thing, I told my wife, I'm like, why don't we surprise him tomorrow and we'll go to the aquarium? I got nothing going on. I'll work on the weekend, but it'll be a perfect day because no one will be there because they go on the weekend.
Yeah.
So, but I'm gonna miss him. But yeah, there's the moments now. It's like everyone needs a habit. They need a lot more to do. So
I'm going to be reflective here for just a moment, and then we can get into the actual topic here. I will say the stance of, enjoy it while you can because they grow up so fast. I can't iterate it enough. Like you hear it, you observe it, you look at it, and I have some kids of my pictures of my kids, not kids of my pictures. I have some pictures of my kids on the wall, and I walk upstairs every day, and I kind of see some of the pictures, and I'm like, they were so little, they were so small, and now they're all. I mean, they're almost my height.
Yeah.
They're almost taller than me now. I'm like, wow, they've really grown up, and so I'm very proud of them. They're doing great things, but on the other hand, I'm like, yeah, it goes quick. So do the best you can, make the memories that you can. Prioritize the family over work all the time. So I know work gets intense, and sometimes you really get absorbed to it. It definitely satisfies me to do work. I like to work hard and want to make people happy with our good work. But you got to remember, they grow up really quickly, and you only get one chance of this. So just a dad reflective moment there.
Especially in the younger ages like you have, Tommy. Like, man, those are great ages. I mean, the emotions are flying high, but the joy and the new experience of like the kids at that age is fantastic because as they get older,
wonder.
A lot of that goes away. Yeah.
Oh,
You look back and you're like, dang, I'm in that next stage, aren't I? I mean, like, so yeah, it's fun.
All right. Moving on to our main topic today. Good job. All right, we made everyone. This beginning of the episode was brought to you by the letter C for crying. Just tugging on the heartstrings. See, that's what you get it all here. You get data, technology, and life advice with your children.
Who needs a soap opera on a weekday?
Enjoy your family or friends, loved ones as they're around. Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Jumping into today's topic, we'll jump into our topic. Today is a mailbag topic. So this is a someone who sends messages in. We have a mailbag, and we're going to take the topic here. It's going to be around what to look for in a new opportunity. So what happens when you are in that job search, either by choice or by force? You are out there in the job market area, and you're looking for something else. If we were doing this, if we had opportunities or we're looking for jobs, what would we look for? So I'll let Seth read the question here, and then we'll jump into some discussions.
Mailbag. Hey, it's a great pleasure to listen to your podcast, but sometimes there are a few comments that can make a big difference. This Monday, I was planning to send a CV after I went to the grocery store. When listening to your podcast, think episode 320, Seth had a comment that caught my attention. The CV should be in Power BI to show your skills. I had to tell I'm guessing the company was going to be a bit delayed and sent a Power BI CV instead this morning, 2 days later. 2 hours later, the first interview was landed. This was, of course, much more fun than creating a PDF. And I love numbers and Power BI and Fabric, not text. Was quite happy despite the short time, half of it spent getting data on a format I could use, and that I had limited time and awake nights with kids. If I had more time, I think I would try to create some samples. I thought of a Strava data. It definitely makes a difference, as coming from the Power BI side, I have often struggled that consulting companies seem to prioritize database knowledge and Power BI skills is more difficult to sell. Trying to think of a question on this topic, how would you recommend others to promote themselves for a new job? What to include in a CV? Often the announced jobs requires deep knowledge in database, Databricks, analytics, AI, business knowledge, Power BI, etc. Meaning they search for someone with self-confidence / skills, greater than skills.
I would say greater than.
Question.
Yeah. Are they searching for someone with higher self-confidence than actually their skills? Yeah.
So this person did submit their name. Thank you very much. But they're in the job search and did not want us to talk about it. But did also send along their Power BI CV. So I certainly appreciated taking a look at that.
Yes.
And it was cool. So
and
that's the question.
Strava, this is a great question. Strava, just so you know, that's an exercise app or cycling app. Basically will track every minute detail of what you do.
Oh, I like it.
It's one of those things I use.
You're in the cycling world, Tommy. You know this stuff.
If it's not on Strava, it never happened, basically.
Okay.
Oh.
Wow.
So
Wow.
you just want, and it does. If you can hook up your heart rate, the revolutions on your bike, how far, like when you had intensity moments. So it has amazing amount of stats. So that's
Cool.
great that he did that. And I'm gonna follow him on Strava. So
There you go. Excellent.
but
Tommy's going to race him now on Strava.
I'm gonna lose. I saw the stat. No, this is a great question, man.
That is a really good question. So distill like there's a lot of really good things in here. I would definitely agree with the kind of initial comment. I'm very encouraged when people show me their skills in Power BI by spending time to build out a Power BI report as a resume. I think this is a really good technique. Really like it. I'd also just, I'm not sure if I understood the second part of the question though. Maybe you guys can distill it. Are we talking about the direction of where to find good jobs, like job descriptions, or are we talking about just the CV portion of this? I'm not sure. Maybe the question was a little bit both in there.
I think what would we recommend on how someone promotes themselves, right, through their CV,
Okay.
and what to include in it.
Okay,
right?
I like that. Let's take that spin first.
I think one of the challenges here, and we talked a little bit about this, is you've got to make it through some of the screening, right? Like auto screening stuff that the vast majority of recruiting platforms already have, right? If you're in the market for Power BI, it's going to scan Power BI, Databricks, like all these things to pass your resume into the next thing. So right off the hit, you probably need both, right? You need a CV, and then I would prominently put in the top a link, like saying, I've seen somewhere it's like, hey, here's the normal CV version, but like this, I'd rather you consume my CV here, right? And with the link to the Power BI report. But you probably need both as opposed to submitting just one or the other these days, because it's a link.
Yeah. Have you even seen people or requests in like the application system where you have, here's the PDF version of your CV, and then here's like the text only version? Like, could you prepare your resume to be scanned by the AI overlords immediately when we give you your information?
It's all keyword searching, right?
Yeah.
So it's like,
but that feels so, like, I get it. That feels so weird because you're like, if you don't know the keywords they're looking for, again, you have to be one of these things. I'm really torn because I want you to be extremely truthful on your resume. Don't cater it to what you think they want you to hear.
Right.
But if your experiences are aligning to what they want, so that means if someone figures out these are the buzzwords that get me an interview, then now you know the buzzwords.
Yeah. Well, but you can't have the conversation unless you can get a foot in the door, and that is so difficult because even
I don't want you to lie about it. Like it's like where I'm like so torn. Like,
so I'm 100. Like, don't get me wrong. I think there's a balance here, right? I agree with you, Mike. If you put something on your resume in such a way that it claims knowledge of something, and we start talking about it, and you know nothing about it,
that turns me off so fast.
You instantly drop down to like you're probably just disqualified.
Yep.
Right, because you're being disingenuous in the one short interaction we have. And yeah, you may have gotten through to me, but you just showed the lengths at which you're willing to like claim that you know something.
Yes.
I think that there's a significant difference in that than reading a job, description, and you have to read it, I think, with intentionality. It's like, what are the core skills that they are demanding, and what are the nice to haves, right? And it's usually like two different sections, right? Or there's verbiage around, must be a master of SQL, must be knowledgeable about, are two vastly different things, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you're reading that, and it's like to this, individual's, question and point, there's a lot of big data things out there, right?
Yeah.
And And if you can say, hey, I've a lot of like tons of experience, or some people have rated themselves. I love ratings, especially when they align, where it's like I'm a 5 out of 5 a SQL. But in the description, you know, I haven't had practical experience in Databricks, but it's a learning thing, and I'm studying it on LinkedIn Learning or something like that.
Yep.
That way, the word shows up, right, in my resume, Databricks, right? Especially if that's part of a job description, like we work within Databricks, et cetera. Like, and it shows an interest and an engagement that somebody is pursuing something outside their job, right? That's a win. So I already know reading that I'm at a deficit, and I could teach you Databricks if that's part of my ecosystem.
Yeah.
As long as you're strong in SQL, because that's the problem with somebody applying for a job. They don't know like what a hiring manager is specifically looking for. And there's a lot of variability in that. And that's why there's the challenge where it's not just cookie cutter. Because if you get in front of somebody and you can prove out these other skills, there's many times where you just sit back and you're like, I wonder if I shifted some things around on my team. That person is really good in here. I could plug this person because they're a great team fit. They've got a lot of knowledge. I can move them over here. And all of a sudden it kind of shifts the need of like what the job is, right? So there's that sort of thing that goes on all the time.
Yep.
And that's where it's just like, be factual and present accurate things, because that will disqualify you, I think. But like lean into those things where it's like, okay, maybe there is a gap. Do some studying, do some course learning, do some whatever to like show you're interested in that area. I think that's important.
There's an important distinction with Seth's talking about blatant lying. And for me, like the things that I'm looking for is that ability to critical thinking. Are you just regurgitating information? Or to your point, like I'm putting a rating, I'm putting the keywords. I'm not saying I'm the best at this, but my ability to know that, hey, if I'm going to submit a resume online, it's probably going to go through some keyword searching. And there are distinctions there. One of the things that as we were going through this, I wrote down right from the mailbag question was, I need some way for candidate to demonstrate that they can learn how to learn. Because we also know this too. What is our long running joke around Power BI that I have 10 years of Power BI experience? We're actually getting there. We're not technically there yet, but when someone puts that on a resume, and I do want to see experience, but I need to see areas on that resume, or I think this even says point. I'm a 2 out of 5 right now, but this is what I'm doing to get better at this because I know this is important for my skills. That means a lot more than just I've done SQL for 5 years. What does that mean? Right. So that's a very big difference, big distinction to me.
Yeah. I'm also, I like a lot of these things. So, I'm trying to think about what you would. So I'm trying to go back really to quiz questions and directly attach to the three things that kind of came. So while you guys were talking, I took some notes. I was taking out his questions. So, what would you recommend to others to promote a new job? And then what would you include in your CV? So I'm going to maybe try and tackle some of those questions. Is that a good transition, or did I just take a and take a right turn here?
No, I think that's perfect.
Okay. So, how would you promote your job? I'm thinking a lot here around.
I think it's promote yourself, isn't it?
How would you?
I mean, I'm inferring yourself.
Yeah. You mean how would you promote what you're doing? Like as, hey, I'm someone who understands and knows about Power BI. What would that look like? Right. On one hand, it depends on where you feel comfortable. Right. I think participating in anything that is publicly available, answering questions on the community site. There's medallions and scores and things, right? So if you are actively participating, Microsoft has given a lot of opportunity to have a community around people who are actively engaged with doing something. Anything you can do around, hey, look, I'm very active on the Reddit community for Fabric. I'm very active on this. Not only am I asking questions, but I'm answering questions. I'm active on the Microsoft community. There's also a number of competitions that go out. A lot of companies or consulting firms have we're going to do a competition based on submit your report here. I really do think that speaks very well. Hey, here's some submissions that I've made with reports to these different competitions. You're given a data set. You're then requested to go build a report. The output of that report is then published to web so people can see it. I think that's a great place. Another one that another site that I like to look at is Novi Pro, I think is the name of the website, but that's another site where people can just submit their works and they can have reports that are published out to their profile and show and highlight what they can build into a report. So I think I like to see those things. Granted, that doesn't really test your modeling skills, but it does show that you're actively engaged with the community and you're kind of trying to learn things across the community.
I will say, and I'm a huge proponent of that, one of of those things, engaging in technical communities or activities.
Yep.
And I frame that as like outside of work type stuff. Is always better, is always good to see, because what it's showing is not necessarily like you're an uber crazy person like us who spent tons and tons of time in developing
True.
community content and all this other thing. It just shows that the technical skills that you're learning at work are not relegated to just the things to perform the job at work. You're trying to get better at your technical skills, which means that's going to result in better work outcomes for me.
Yeah.
Right. For the business that you're applying to.
I totally agree with that.
You're saying, I like what I do so much so that I engage in these other things so that I get better at what I do. And that's always a big check mark. I'd much rather hire a person that has like those sorts of things on the resume as opposed to somebody who does not.
Yes.
And you can tell in conversation, but those, like, if you're talking about like what gets you the interview, that's the type of stuff that's like, oh my gosh, like they're
I want to at least
engaged.
talk to them.
Yeah.
like the top one on there would be consistent listener to the Explicit Measures podcast. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
Like
you can recite for word
It's
for
a badge
word
of honor,
episode
yeah.
1 through episode 300. Like that's
It's
But
basically like
it's-
having a
it's-
reference. Yeah.
it's not like being the top person, but it is like, I think, showing that you're engaged in these things because it opens your ideas, it opens your thoughts. And if you're technically learning, like I said, there's so much nuance, there's so much to learn in our ecosystems, that when you can have conversations about, oh, you follow that person on such and such video and they have great tutorials, like which one's your favorite one, and then help me create the report that you saw as part of my resume, and this is what I learned. And like, that is so key, because if I'm trying to get to know you and you're who you are as an individual, you're showing me like a lot of really key skills that are going to be required for this job typically.
So I'll take that a slight step further, because I think we've seen people's reports and they're pretty cool, but I think we've all been burned by just seeing someone build a report. And I'll take the example of our mailbag questionnaire he built the Strava report. That's great. And it is awesome to do. And I think that's a different, definitely a distinction. However, there's a difference between getting a job and probably getting your dream job. If you are really searching and you really want to show not just your ability from the technical side, but really what we do, it's not the means to an end, is not a report, right? It's never that. Start building a story around that, where if this were me, I would bike every day. I would start a blog on Medium or something and say, my goal is to build my average miles per hour up to 17 miles, and just log that every day and show how the report updates. And so like what the variables that I've tried to change. So now I don't just have a report, I built a bar chart and I have a model, but I also understand what can move or, change. To me, if I'm reading someone who has this more of a story around any of their numbers or any given report that they build, it's like, okay, they don't just understand the ability to make pretty designs, but they're actually showcasing to me that they're actually looking at the numbers, looking at what can change. And again, like what we're trying to do is trying to find insights.
I hear what you're saying. I don't agree with you.
Why?
Because like, I would not recommend that people spin up and do their own blog. Like that's not required,
Ooh, that's interesting.
nor necessary for like the vast majority of individuals. They're not gonna spend that kind of time on this. We're otherwise. So if let me rephrase. Is what you just recommended required to land a good Power BI job or differentiate yourself from the masses of people? Like, no, it's not. Will it if you can point to a blog or like something that you're sharing back with the community? Yeah, but that's only if that's interesting to you. It's only if it's a driver for you where you want to share back to people the things that you're learning. I suppose like think about it in terms of like you're not Tommy. Power BI is something that you enjoy, business intelligence. It's your career choice. But you go to work and then you go home, and outside of work is much more important than like family or traveling or some other extracurricular activity is where you find joy. It's not Power BI, it's not business intelligence. You enjoy what you're doing, but you're not passionate about it, but you do want to differentiate yourself because you want to do a different job. Like, to recommend that people start a blog or track all of this stuff and outside of work is not a prerequisite to differentiating yourself, I don't think. Can you? Will it push you into these other realms? Yes, but I don't think like I'd go, yep, that's a great route, because people aren't going to enjoy that. They're not going to enjoy putting it all together. They're not going to have the fun that you do, because it's going to be a time suck. It's going to be like, man, like they're telling me I have to go spin up all of this other blog stuff to like even make a difference. And I just like it. Yes, for the 5%, but I want to like my comments are like in the 95%. You want a job, you want to differentiate yourself. And so like I'm pushing back because I think the percentage of people that would actually spool that up is much lower than what you would say. And to say that you have to do that,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to add a little note there as well. Thanks, Tommy. I think I'm trying to highlight the idea. So honestly, Tommy, you recommended a blog. I was thinking I was going to recommend that, and now I'm like, well, Seth said no, don't do that, so I'm not going to recommend it anymore.
I'm just
so like,
saying my opinion.
that's definitely don't want to.
So you would recommend it.
Seth
as well.
will lean into the microphone. His voice will change, and I'll get
change my
yelled at by Seth.
Always right. I'm not always right. I'm just opinion.
I'm teasing you.
I'm rebutting.
Maybe not a blog, right? So maybe a blog is a bit aggressive on what's going on. Maybe so. What I want to look for, and maybe this is what I was trying to go towards, is I'm interested to know that you're an active learner and you are able to articulate what you're learning to other people. Because one thing, a pattern that I think I see in Fabric right now is everything in Fabric. There's a lot of it. There's a lot building. There's a lot to learn. And no one's going to come in and say, I'm the expert of Fabric. It's only been out since November of last year, officially. So to say you're coming in as a complete expert, and Microsoft changes things so fast, how can you stay up on top of all the Kusto stuff and all the real time and all the other things? You would have to have 1,000 projects on your plate. You'd literally need to be a consultant to be able to touch all the different aspects as fast as Microsoft is developing them. Their team is large now. It's not just a Power BI team. It's a data engineering team. It's a real-time team. It's all these extra teams pulling these experiences in. So I really want to see, however you display this, right? Whether it is a blog, maybe it's just a LinkedIn post or article. You can go to Medium. You don't have to spin up all this extra stuff and write things down. I do think it's worthwhile it's important for me to see you're able to absorb information from other people or experts, distill it down to something that you can use and articulate a solution to a problem. So for me, it's around, can you do those kind of things? And is there an easy way to show problem, did some research, here's a solution? And it may not be the perfect one, but I think to your point, like, being active on community forums, engaging with some technical forums, community things, I think are very relevant. And I think by participating in those technical communities, maybe writing an article or two on LinkedIn's a great medium. I can see who you are. I can see all the articles that you've posted, and I would love to see maybe you highlight some articles that other people have written and say, hey, I tried this. This worked really well for me. Or, I tried this. Here's a different pattern. You can even, a lot of what I think we do is we assume that everyone has to be unique. You have to come up with something from scratch that's never been done before. I think it's perfectly fine to take someone else's idea and put your little spin on it, and then give credit to where you heard the idea from originally, and then add your little piece to it as well. That's okay. So you don't have to start from scratch all the time. So all that being said, I don't think it's a requirement for me. I'm not going to hire you. I'm not going to just go out and hire you or not hire you based on if you have a blog or not. I don't think that's a decision point for me. However, it will help you differentiate yourself away from, I think, other people that don't have those kind of things or don't have those kind of interactions.
And that's part of my rebuttal, because Seth, I'm having trouble reconciling two of the things that you said, because you said, how can you separate yourself from the masses and also get your dream job? I think you can get a pretty good job to be an analyst just with the report, with the resume. Yeah, a lot of people do that all the day, but to me, and maybe this is just my own personality, not going to be a sheeple, so to speak, but there's this innate thing that, what are you trying to do too? Like, for the person who's asking the mailbag question, are they just trying to be an analyst, a junior analyst? Are they trying to build up their career to be a director of business intelligence? Are they trying to do all of those aspects? I'm not saying you have to write Chris Webb level blog articles, that you have to have.
Oh, I am. If it's not better than Chris Webb, I don't even look at it.
Well, then you're hiring one of one. So basically, but
you have to hire Jeffrey Wang. You can only hire the founder of DAX.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. If you're not that technical, then don't talk to me. No, but I think
don't talk to me.
The idea that the mailbag questions, how do I get my dream job? How do I really separate myself? Well, it doesn't maybe have to be a blog, but I think if I am answering that question, not just how do I get a good job or a job or my foot in the door, well, maybe it's something on social, is something in a networking capacity, whether it's the digital world that we live in or it's a local network that you have. But there's more than just demonstrating I can build a bar chart with conditional formatting, in my opinion. And again, whether it's just showcasing to me or showcasing to other employers that not only is this person going to just dive into data, they're also someone who's going to, in a sense, be a leader. And I think that's
stop. See, okay, and that's okay. No, it 100% disagree with you, right? Because you just said something. I want them to be a leader. No, not every role on the team is a leader role.
That's fair.
No. Why are you?
I mean, you're the leader.
I think you're conflating. You're conflating all of these roles, and this is the question. The question was not my dream job.
Okay.
What do you recommend in jobs? And if you read any forums out there, people are struggling to find jobs. My recommendations are based on separating yourself from the millions of the same resume. And from a hiring manager perspective, it gets so mundane and boring because everybody thinks the information on that sheet that is presented in the same way is different, and it's not. It's not. Everybody is doing the same, like 2 or 3 formats. Some people have different paragraphs. Some people embellish a little bit more about their history.
Yeah.
To disseminate, like, what do you actually know? What is the value you're going to bring to my company is difficult. So what I'm saying is the recommendations to promote yourself or put yourself in a position where your resume stands out does not include dream job or you having to go do all of these other extracurricular activities. And I would even argue in terms of like levels of jobs, analyst to director, the only difference in there in my recommendations would be like your skill sets or what you've accrued over time that qualifies you for one job over the other. Like to Mike's point in this, I think there's 2 things in here. One, we're talking about participation, right? Show me activity that's happening. Like, are you a serious technical learner? All of your participation in communities, or if you choose to write a blog, like those are interest points to me. It's like, oh wow, okay, like this person really enjoys sharing other things with the community. That's great. That could be a good quality I want on my team, because it shows that they can communicate well. I might read one of your 20 blogs, right? Like it. Does it automatically qualify you or push you into a different realm of somebody else who has better technical skills? No. In fact, if I'm going to compare that to some of the things that I think, Mike, your other point was, which is show me the value you bring. If you can do that, and what I think differentiates yourself when you present your CV in a Power BI report, and what I would recommend to this person is, awesome. What you're showing me is like a very clean, solid way of you developing, like breaking your thoughts out, your resume, your like, it looks great. One thing I would add in here is an example report. And I think he alludes to this from the Strava data, right? Like he's a biker, whatever. I do recommend this though, Tommy. You're right. There's a huge broad spectrum of all of the things we do. But rather than recommend and say, you should blog about all of those things, and you should have this series of things that outline for me what you built in this report, and I'm going to spend an hour going through all that, it's not the case. What I want is what Mike said. And what I would recommend is have in your Power BI report CV an example report and what we've talked about in the past, which is a summarized page. Summarize for me what you did. What is the complexity of the data set that you had to do? What is the model? Like, can you summarize for me this is what I did, here are some of the challenges of that, here's the questions I had, and here are the insights I drive with this report. You give me that one page and the report, and that automatically, to me, like cuts out all this recommendation need for like building a blog, going into the community, like telling people what you did. Like you just did everything I would ever ask you to do. Summarize for me everything you would like. Summarize for me the output, and this is what you're going to deliver for me on the team. Instantly, you're going to be in the top running. I'm going to want to have this conversation with you. I don't have to do any legwork, right? As a hiring manager, the more legwork I have to do, I may do that for elevated positions. If, like, to your point, if it's a leadership position, if I want to see some of the communication things, but at the same time, like, you're leaning into some of those skill sets that I would absolutely not put on a normal BI developer or analyst or base level. And in general, I think that baseline recommendation would hold true for the regular level jobs as well as the higher level. But the higher level, you may say, you know what, it'd be good if I showed some of my communication style. I'm going to go do some posts, or potentially do a blog. But like I said, I'm not going to build that just for a CV.
And that's fair. And I see those points. I guess maybe, again, I'm taking this from my own way of looking at the world. But in my head, if I'm looking for a job, why wouldn't you? Because you have all of a sudden this arsenal in this toolbox where you become just getting a job to, I think, becoming desirable. And this is all things I can use in the interview as well, right? Because this is not just getting the foot in the door.
Don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you.
And I think, and
I want to
again,
say,
like, if
I
you
think
have
you're
the
saying,
time,
Tommy,
an
I think
hour
you're saying
in the morning.
I think you're saying, Tommy, it's valuable. It's just, I think what Seth is just trying to communicate is it's not an absolute required thing. So
I would not say it's a prerequisite.
Yes.
I would agree with you there, but
it's a technique to use to be able to one, skill yourself up, become the active learner, and then show there's some actual works out of that you could then point to.
If I close up Pulio BI Consulting tomorrow and I want to get a job back at a corporation downtown, my schedule is morning, I'm writing a blog or doing something that I'm going to put out into the world. Then I'm going to apply for jobs. Then I'm going to network, right? Like
in the afternoon, I'm going to make a video about Learn Fabric, and then
I'm going to cry
in the evening. Then I will, build another Power BI report.
I'm going to build a job schedule for me without a job. And again, that might be me because I want to do everything I could not just to have a job that I'm okay with, but why wouldn't you want to have your dream job? Why wouldn't you want to be in a place where they were desiring you? And again,
I think that's
I'm taking this a step too far, but
no, I think it's a completely separate podcast, which because, and I would say this is the pushback we've gotten in some of the comments when we've talked about some of this in the past is from individuals I think I'm trying to represent, which is the vast majority of everybody, and they don't want to be you, Tommy. They have no desire whatsoever to be you. There is a difference.
I want to be more Italian.
Why would they listen?
Between that and saying like, hey, how did we get here? How did you get where you're at, Tommy? Like, if I want to be one of the most foremost Power BI people in the
world greatest,
how do I? But don't get me wrong. How do I go about doing that? Right? To me, that is it's a completely different path. You're looking at this in terms of like, okay, we can all draw on our experiences and they're all different to get to a point where we have a podcast, right? We're talking about these things on a daily basis. We've gained a lot of experience and expertise, and it took a lot of effort in the things that you're talking about. We started a blog, started the sites, we do this, we do that, we do videos, like all of that. Has that benefited you? Of course. Does it open all of these other doors that otherwise would not be open? Of course, right? Does it require an insane amount of effort? Of course. And that's why I'm saying it's a different conversation. Is it valid? Is it going to be like, yes, you will guarantee yourself to be separated, individualized, probably to the point where you're not submitting CVs. Right? You're sought after.
I don't send out any.
And that's
people don't
why
ask me
I
what's
say
your resume,
it's
Michael.
That's what I say. It's so significantly different.
Yeah, it's different.
And what I'm trying to do here is like keep it to a level where it's like with some effort, you guys, you can separate yourself on your CV. You don't need to be a top 1%er of Tommy to get a job, because you don't. You just need to separate out those value things that put you in a different light. And it can be done with some effort, but not to the level that you're talking about.
Really interesting. Okay. I really like the conversation here. I want to take maybe a slight derivation here, and then we'll kind of start to, I guess, wrap it up here a little bit and get our final thoughts. I wanted to touch on the point of what to include on the CV. What do you put on there?
Yeah.
This is literally off the top of my head. I've been kind of taking some notes on the side. I think that this breaks down into kind of three main areas now that Fabric exists. So I'm gonna give my lens here on where do I think companies are going with Power BI. I feel like a lot of companies that have Power BI or are exploring Power BI are heavily invested or looking at what will Fabric do for them, and are there good use cases to apply Fabric into what they're doing with Power BI. So a lot of organizations, I think, are finding value in it and easily want to get their hands on it. So that's kind of the lens of where I'm starting from. So if you're saying what to include in the CV, I think I would align, and again, this is, I got to get a blog out about this because this is just, this topic is coming up so much recently. There is the Power BI skill set. And I really think it's solidly how are you teaching report consumers? What are your report consuming skills, UI, UX kind of things? If you're a report author, what kind of things do you know how to do there? And what kind of things are you finding that are valuable in that report authoring space? Talk to your skills around how you do semantic modeling, DAX, relationships. What size of models have you worked with? I think that's important to know the scale of where you're at in that space. Then talk to me about how do you release management? Like one thing I find that's very weak when you talk about, hey, I'm a Power BI expert, no one is thinking about the architecture, and this is an architect comment, but it doesn't mean it's something that's not out there and you can't learn it. Understand the idea of thin reports and data models. Understand the fact that there's more than one person potentially working on a project together. How do you deal with that? Now, you could have a lot of different solutions, but the fact that you've thought about it or you have interacted with teams that are trying to get their way through this one, what does that release management look like for you? Have you used deployment pipelines? Have you had experience working on premium for fabrics? Those are things that you may be in a position today where you're not able to do those things, right? So, when we So that's one area for Power BI. I'll put that down. The last one I'll put there for Power BI is, or maybe Fabric as well, is tell me what administration things have you done? Do you only administer workspaces, or are you actually in the admin portal? That's a different skill set as well. What I think Fabric adds in here is there's this whole new library of information that we should probably start getting our hands around. What are some of these data engineering things? Do you kind of understand what Spark is? How do you do Spark SQL? Or how do you use SQL or T-SQL to write things? Like, more technical. But if I'm looking to hire someone, if I'm looking for a differentiator, I'm looking for someone who knows the Power BI skills, as well as some or has dabbled in or is starting to learn. Take some initiative on your own. Go to learn.microsoft.com. Get some certifications. Stick them on your LinkedIn. Show me that you're taking some time to kind of at least get your head around what do these technologies do, and start trying to work in some of them. Do some test projects if you can. So I think those are opportunities for you to kind of explore a bit more in there. Be frankly honest, everyone can go get a Fabric trial at an F64 level. You can have it for a couple months. You can spend some time going through tutorials and doing things there. So Spark, SQL, working with notebooks, understanding what KQL and real-time solutions are available to you. I don't need you to be an expert in those areas. I just need you to show me you're spending some time learning them. The last part here, which I feel the least amount of people have experience, is what are you doing predictive-wise? Where does the data science realm play inside your Fabric ecosystem? Now, I'm giving you a lens of things you potentially could include. I'm not expecting you to have a single data point on all these things, but if I'm giving recommendations to people who have been traditionally only Power BI modeling and reports, I'm going to really encourage you to differentiate yourself. Give me some understanding around things you like or do not like in these other areas that are related to Fabric. Anyways, those are just kind of initial thoughts around what I would include on the CV. I would speak to those experiences. Last thing here, Seth, that you talked about resumes and the format continually looks the same. Dude, I'm doing this a lot right now. I'm going through tons of resumes. I mean, I'm now probably hitting the mark of where I'm hitting 100 people plus of doing interviews for them, or looking through resumes at least. Mm-hmm. You're right. It's hard to differentiate. I mean, think of it. You're the person doing the interview. You get maybe 15 to 30 minutes of my time on a piece of paper with things that you're going to write up that are important to you.
And it starts to diminish.
Right? I get saturated, and I can't give everyone the same, person. So, to make it fair for everyone, I mean, you're going to need to take breaks. You're going to need to step away from all the resumes because there's a lot going on there. So how do I could skip over someone because they're not giving me the right buzzwords that I need. To your point earlier, you need it, but speak truthfully about what you're doing. And for me, I'm aligning on, yes, it's important to have some work history and some other companies that you have been at, and that's important to me. But I think really what's important to me is thinking really through what your skills are and what you want to be doing, or what you're good at in those areas. Power BI, report to release managers. What are you doing in data engineering, and what are you doing in data science or any predictive things? Even if it's simple stuff, playing with notebooks, doing a simple algorithm using Profit, whatever from Facebook as an imported library, and predicting something. At least just tell me you're playing with it. You're interested in it. You don't have to be an expert there. So those are the kind of things that I think I'm looking for in a resume. I could be missing things. What do you guys think?
I feel like you're touching on another nerve for me, but we'll pause that. This goes back to our skills conversation, the skills matrix too, a bit.
It does, and I think this is what's really lighting the fire under under me right now, is there is no good one place. Like, so for example, I've had some people tell me in interviews when we're talking to them, "Hey, I found your skills matrix that you have on your website. I went through it and kind of felt out where I need to fit against that." Mm-hmm. That was great for me to hear them, because one, they found the website and they were kind of Googling what skills they need to know. So that was interesting. Again, I'm going to understand that everyone knows about our skills matrix. But on the other hand, I know what was the standards in that thing. I built it, and there is levels to this. And so no one's really communicating the levels of skill or experiences that are in some of these places here. If you tell me you're a black belt in statistics, that's different, because there's like a test and there's measured things. If you tell me you go to, hey, what's your score on learn.microsoft.com. That's important to me because that's a body of work. You can spend a lot of time. There's hours and hours of content there. You can go through, you can test things, you can build stuff. So, this whole area is really interesting. The skills matrix that is out there, or the concepts that are developing those things that Seth built. I mean, that is a really interesting area or space that we can explore into. So, anyways, and that's all I kind of wanted to say there. Sorry, I did not build the skills matrix for FYI. That was Seth's.
We built the skills.
That was Seth's creation.
I do agree with you from the standpoint that like when people are diving into the website, right?
Yes.
Or your business thing, and they're asking questions, or to that point, utilizing something that the site and we built, put front and center as far as like, yeah, here are my skills. That shows interest. That's a great thing.
Yeah.
But I guess my closing thoughts would be this. When you're generating a CV, are you thinking about the audience of the CV? And Mike described in detail, and I think so have I, who that audience is. It's the hiring manager that's consuming hundreds of CVs. So when we talk about differentiation, it's differentiating yourself from the hundreds of CVs, right? Like how do I stand out in the crowd? If all of these people now have Power BI skills that have ramped up and we're all going after the same job, how am I the one out of the hundreds?
Yes.
And if in your CV you're able to it's to get the interview, right? We haven't even talked about like the actual interview itself. It's to get the interview, because and what drives you to that conversation is somebody thinks that you are the person that could help them fill that business role, that is going to move the business in the right direction. So what are the things I would throw on there? I 100% agree with Mike in the consolidated way. See if you don't do just a rote CV, right? There's a job description. Try to figure out within there what are the key points and the key areas of need, and whether or not your skills align with them. Even if they do, I understand like we need you got to put a lot of resumes out there to get a job.
Yep.
And some you just don't know, but be truthful about like the areas that you're strong in and you're pursuing and whatnot. And if it isn't a direct fit, it doesn't matter as long as you're projecting strength in other areas. Like I said, there's a lot of shifting that can happen in businesses. A couple of the highlighted areas: data. What are your data skills? What are your model skills? What are your report skills? Like, can you quantify like in that path? Because it already shows me you're part of an ecosystem. Even if you're a report builder, you know that you're part of this data ecosystem, and you're showing me that you understand that scope. Put a section for focus for learning. That is exactly where you can easily ramp up, do some video learning, do some whatever. I highly recommend diving into like the big data ecosystems. Yep. Understand how to connect, like in Fabric, in Databricks, in whatever. If you can articulate that, yes, you know how to connect to these things, you know how to query in them, you're talking notebooks already. Like, are you familiar at least with the ecosystem? Like, that speaks volumes. You may not have direct experience, but at least it's like, oh, well, they're going and self-learning about this stuff already. It'll be an easier path for me to teach them a lot of the things underneath. And then show me. Right? This is the Power BI section. This is like build your resume in a CV, summarize. We talked about this earlier, like consolidate information onto a page. Tell me what you're going to show me. Tommy, I agree with you to your point. Sticking a bar chart out there, right? Like, is that value? Are you showing me complex bookmarks and interactions? And like, okay, well, now you're showing me that you understand the visualization layer. But to Tommy's point, how do you drive that? Like, I did some really cool data stuff. You do that in the summary page, and it also shows you can articulate and communicate, right? That's an output I would love in my organization. If it's like, if you're showing me that, that's exactly what I would want built in my own area. And then ultimately, like, all of this is like, if there were some really big value things that you did in previous organizations, I don't want to know everything about you. That's for the conversation, right? Like, hey, show me a one-liner. Like, the biggest thing I did in my past thing was save $10 million because we drove insights into this area, or our report was driving, $5 million in new revenue or whatever the case may be. That's a one-liner I want to talk to you about. How did you go do that? Like, who did you talk to? Like, pique my interest so that I want to talk to you. That's what the CV should do. Not like outline every little bit of your history, because then I have to read it, one. And two, I'm not going to understand it in the way that you can articulate it better. So those are the things I would throw on there to kind of separate yourself out.
That sounds like a blog article in itself. I really like this section. So my last final thoughts is a bit of a hot take. If this whole opinion that I've had, it wasn't a hot take, but I think that the traditional
It's going to get hot. I can see it coming. It's coming. It's going to be a hot take. Here we go.
I promise I won't respond.
I appreciate. We'll wait till the end to find that out. So until I believe that.
Oh boy.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but hearing what you guys are doing every day, I have to look 100 resumes. It's saturated. Even for me, and I'm not even in the job hunt, that gives me agita. That gives me a lot of anxiety, because like just the fact, even if I'm confident in my skills, the likelihood that mine floats to the top, even if I have all these things on a resume, pretty poor. It's a low rate. Yeah.
No, because what we're recommending, I rarely see. Tom.
Okay.
Fine. Rarely see. The only times I've seen it are the people I hired.
Well, there you go.
Boom.
That's why I'm recommending.
Boom.
I did get you to respond.
Podcast mic drop.
So, yeah. But regardless, you are still competing against 1,000 pieces of paper or applications in the same system.
Yep.
So what can you do? And potentially the traditional resume and this traditional CV are dead for us. But what can you do? I think I'll use the words that Seth said, because I think that's literally, you can't say it any better. How can you pique the interest of where you're desiring to go?
Yep.
And if you can do that, like, oh, I've never seen this before, or I want to learn more about that, then it's your personality. Then it's everything else, all your other skills. But that is the differentiator. It's the keyword search, just submitting your resume on LinkedIn, fine. But what can you do to pique someone's interest?
I like that. So I'm going to go into my final thoughts here on this one. So this is a great topic. I think this is really interesting. I'm in the throes of doing interviews and looking at people's resumes now. So definitely feel like this is a really accurate, good question to ask here. I think, yeah, Seth, I think you make a really great point around, well, we really probably should follow up on this. There's probably some other topics around, generating resumes, how do you prepare for an interview? What are good things to kind of prep for this stuff? I will say this. I think in this comment here, there's something around, how do you know when you're looking for a dream job? I'm going to say this is probably another whole podcast by itself, but I don't necessarily know if you're going to find in a resume or being able to hit a company and get the culture of that company out in the resume and potentially the 1 hour, maybe a little bit longer interview that you have with that company. It's going to be very difficult to sift that out. So, general observations here. I think, how can you show me you're a learner, continually learning, you're investing in people and what you're doing, but also identify what kind of job you want to be working in. If your dream job is doing all the things, I've observed smaller companies seem to have more effort around that you do everything. In larger companies, there's more people, there's more process, there's potentially more politics. So if that's something you don't want to deal with, then you have to move somewhere else. Anyways, dream job is probably another whole topic all by itself. With that said, thank you all very much for listening to this one. Hopefully this is a good conversation that has triggered some thoughts in your mind. If you are looking for jobs, or if you are going through the CV route, hopefully take some of these advice away. Maybe that will help you in your career path as you go deliver a new job. If you take some of our advice and you get a job using this advice, please let us know in the comments, or come back to us and give us some feedback and say, well, what worked for you? What are things that you're finding that are valuable as well? That being said, Tommy, where else can you find the podcast? You muted yourself,
find
Tommy.
Us on Apple and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. Helps us out a ton. If you have a question, idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode, head over to powerbi.tips/podcast. Leave your name and a great question, just like today. Join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m., and join the conversation on all of powerbi.tips social media channels.
Awesome. Thank you so much and appreciate it. We'll see you next time.